Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hello, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Farscape Season 1, Episode 7, PK Tech Girl. Whilst investigating a derelict peacekeeper battleship, the crew resort to brinksmanship to best a group of scavengers. How did you find this episode?
I liked it a whole bunch. This might be my favorite so far.
That would not be a controversial choice. The premiere was fairly good, but until now we haven't had one that's of that quality.
This episode is good, and I particularly want to point out the direction, which is fantastic. There are so many great shots in this episode. Too many for me to remember, but just to name a few, there was some cool depth of field camera work when Zan and Rigel were talking. There was the opening shot of Rigel's face, the extreme close-up, the wide shots of the vessel while they're exploring. Just so many shots that stood out to me. I loved this episode visually.
There were a lot of fast sort of foreground shots of Durka, Rigel's ex-nemesis. I say nemesis, torturer.
He could be both.
Nemesis kind of implies they're on equal footing.
Oh, right.
The opening shot is cool, but really weird. Because it's a Blade Runner reference, I guess.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
And a Star Wars reference.
Or that.
It zoomed in on Rigel's eye, just like the eye at the start of Blade Runner, with the city reflected in it. And then
okay.
someone says, "Look at the size of that thing." That's from Star Wars, isn't it?
While we're naming things, while we're naming pop culture things, this reminded me a lot of Terminator 2 with all the steam and the fire and the industrial setting.
I thought you were going to say the weird Jurassic Park bit.
Oh, with the little window and he's staring through.
Yeah, and trying the handle.
Yeah.
There's a bizarre number of seemingly pointless references in this episode. They don't detract from it. It's just odd that they're having fun whilst they're making it.
How dare they have fun?
Well, they're supposed to be producing something, not mucking about. This episode was much darker than the show has been previously.
Yeah, there's stuff about torture and how people have lost everything they've known or loved.
Numerous corpses, all of who were horribly decomposed and died in different horrible ways.
It was kind of shocking when they revealed that one guy shot himself.
That was quite fitting. He basically pulled a Hitler.
He failed art school?
He may well have done. We don't really know whether he did or didn't from this episode.
Okay, future episode. The tech girl recognizes a body, a corpse, that is charred beyond recognition. And I want to know how she knew.
It must have been one of her team because it was burned by the Sheang.
She knew the person's teeth really well.
Maybe he was the only other person on the team.
Okay.
They kept calling it a unit, but it was just her and one bodyguard.
Unit was the cute nickname they gave themselves.
It's like in Flight of the Conchords when they refer to their fan as a fan base. There was a lot going on in this episode. I think one of the strengths of Farscape is when the plots are quite dense.
There was a lot going on, but it felt all connected. None of it felt detached.
So you have a sort of A plot and B plot, but they're connected in like a sort of V shape. And then there's a sort of C plot of Rigel and Durka, which is sort of adjacent to the A plot, let's say. So it's sort of like an F shape, capital F.
And it's fine when stuff is adjacent, as it is here, as long as it doesn't feel shoehorned in, and it doesn't here, and that's why it works. I hate when stuff feels like it's there to fill time.
When you have an A and B plot that are completely distinct. So it's just as 2 episodes in one, and if one of them is horribly bad, then it just feels like they padded the episode out. Mixed plots are always the best, and in Farscape, the characters just sort of talk to each other, even when they're in different rooms and stuff, because they've got little communicators. But they don't have to boppity boop them or anything, they just talk to each other. Which is a weird thing on a show, to have all the characters sort of just linked up.
They can't have alone time?
Well, they can, but in the heat of action, they're just talking to each other like they're all in a sort of Skype call. I'm not saying it's wrong, that's almost certainly how it would work with the technology. Why wouldn't you do that? It's really handy.
Right.
It's just most shows, especially sci-fi shows, don't do that. They always have to still sort of make a phone call. They have to go to a communication panel or press their comm badge or something and dial the specific person they want to talk to.
I guess that idea is too far removed from what we understand of communication. The people can't bear to think about constantly talking to other people.
It makes for a complicated narrative. It fits in the sort of actiony stuff that goes on in Farscape. I don't think it's out of people's expectations. People talk to other people all the time, like at work and stuff. If you have an office job, quite often you have some tool for communicating with different people.
Which you can conveniently ignore.
Yeah, I'm assuming they can switch off their comms as well. I'm not saying it's mandatory. I'm just saying most shows don't have characters sort of multi-conferencing. What do you think of the Sheang, another alien race?
The Toad guys?
Yes.
Awesome. I loved this goes with what I was saying earlier about the camera work. I loved all the close-ups on their faces and seeing their lips move and stuff. The puppetry is awesome.
They looked a bit sort of fakey, like a guy in a rubber suit, but I think they still look good.
They made me think of the live-action Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Or the classic Godzilla. Or like a Power Rangers guys.
Yeah, I got that vibe, but I enjoyed
A lot
it.
better.
Yeah. I was fine seeing these guys who are clearly dudes in rubber suits because I like seeing their mouths move and their eyes blink.
They weren't the first Sheangs to be shown. In the premiere, Zan is talking to one when they're on the planet.
I totally forgot. Do they look the same?
Yeah, they're in the background. I think it's just one. They brought them back for this episode because they thought they looked cool.
Fair enough.
So if you had 2 panels that were going to be attracted to each other magnetically,
I wouldn't put them next to each other.
yeah, maybe you might put something in between them,
Yeah, maybe.
like a mattress, or it's just anything, basically anything.
Yeah, anything would do.
I mean, I guess it has
Besides
to be,
air.
yeah, perhaps not metal, depending on exactly what was going on. Flesh seemed fine though. It didn't go through John's gloves or his body, so anything about similar to flesh would have worked, and they had tons of corpses lying around. So, in a worst case scenario, they could have just piled up some corpses. Instead, John has to hold them over his head, very strong, slightly silly.
But it allows him to show off his muscly arms to Jelena? Was that her name?
Correct. You get 8 points.
AKA Tech Girl.
Yes, Peacekeeper Tech Girl. This episode is named after the role of a character.
This episode has the distinction of greatest inverse relationship of quality of title and quality of episode.
It's a working title.
Still a title.
Well, they really should have gone back and renamed them. There's a lot of sexy sex tension going on.
So much. All over the place.
John's in there, kind of, with Jelena. She's into him, but also works for a violent psychopath who wants John dead, so, it's probably not
Classic story.
Yeah. She's putting her career before her relationship. And Aaron got mad awkward.
Which led to that great scene of her lifting that thing over her head.
Yes. Which, due to recording problems on the shoot, she had to dub over in post.
Was that done in other places in this episode? Because it felt off in places.
It may have been, I don't know. I only know that line was because they had to get something heavy for her to lift in the recording booth because she couldn't convincingly voice someone straining without actually physically straining. You can't really fake that.
This is so heavy.
And you just sound constipated.
Yeah, I sound like I need to cut this short and go to the bathroom.
Actually, you sound like you might be fine. The straining is not achieving anything. They put shield parts on Moya.
That seems really helpful.
They never really clarified if that means Moya now has a kind of broken shield.
That's what I took from it. Was I not supposed to think that?
Yeah, they took the parts on, so presumably if they get them working, they can make a shield with holes in it. That's a cool little tech thing. So they got these shields, like a sort of Star Trek deflector shield thing, but
Right.
it's two separate systems because individually they have holes, but I guess when you put two, they overlap.
I liked that little bit, how it's not uniform and it's not totally convenient, and how they had to work around it. And it led to great details in the story. There were holes in the shield, so they were able to fly through. It caused problems. It wasn't totally convenient. Good stuff.
It's also good that technology actually has a process behind it. If you have a microwave and you put something metal in it, it will go on fire, or it'll heat up a lot and be problematic. I don't know, you can go on YouTube and find out what happens, but that's just like, here's a heating up box. If that heating up box called a microwave was never invented, but there was a sci-fi TV show with a microwave, they would never put in, oh yeah, don't put metal in it. It would just always heat up stuff fine, There would be no caveats to it.
Yeah, in sci-fi, it's okay, we have this wonderful machine. It either works perfectly all the time, or it's just not working because we need that situation for the plot.
I think this was slightly guilty of that, but at least they had a shield, and it's like, well, it's slightly more complicated than it's just a shield. It actually has some kind of concept behind it.
Which they could have completely avoided doing. So I'm glad those details are there.
Yeah, they could have just said this shield is patchy.
Yeah.
It's not working properly.
Oh, this coil is compromised. That causes holes in the shield.
That probably would have been fine. It's just I like this better where it has to be two interleaved ones. One isn't enough, and then they put one on the ship, so they have a rubbish shield. It was pretty good. It got like 90% coverage.
Which makes me wonder about the second shield.
Because they put them both on at the same time.
So those holes could still align.
Yeah, but you'd get like 99% coverage. Or maybe the holes it's like bubbles in a bath. Like they glue together or something. There's a big unanswered question in this episode, which is just sort of left hanging there. They find this unbeatable battleship completely wrecked. And they do mention that whoever wrecked them is probably quite considerable. Obviously, it happened a long time ago, so they're not around anymore. It's just, it's good that they never really resolved that. They didn't find like a captain's log file that said, oh no, a space vortex got us, darn. Someone wrecked that ship, and they don't know who it was. But they're out there somewhere.
It wouldn't have served the plot in any of the plots in this episode, so it's good they didn't do that. That would have been arbitrary.
A lot of shows do randomly tie up things that don't need to be tied up. The mystery is fine as it is.
Yeah, this is a great mystery.
I'm sure we'll find out next episode exactly what happened in painstaking detail.
There's another unanswered question.
Why did the special effects on the magnetic panels disappear when the Sheyang died?
That's another one, yeah.
Oh, what was your one?
What Leonardo DiCaprio movie is John referencing?
But is there another one it could be?
He wouldn't reference Titanic. No one references that.
Are you kidding?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen Titanic. I don't know what you're on about. He talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly as well.
I remember that came up, but I can't remember why.
It was the poster in his room.
Oh, right.
On the benefits of being soft, as he says. Some might say not a psychopath.
I would say that.
He showed basic empathy for a person in a very difficult situation.
That's just how I like to compliment people. I tell them they're not psychopaths. It goes over really well.
I'm sure that's highly complimentary. John seemed quite in tune with his inner feelings.
Which is surprising. He should be losing his mind given what's happened to him.
He is an astronaut. Astronauts are crazy. They are. Well, they're not crazy, but they have... they're trained to the excess in tons of stuff. They are calm in pretty much any situation they need to be calm in, because otherwise they would just freak out when they sat on the big rocket full of bombs that blew them up into space. That's generally that's a bit too much for someone who is prone to panic. So I can buy that he's got his head together. That's a key part of being an astronaut. Not going space crazy.
When you lay it out like that, it does make sense that John is calm and collected.
He is a little out of his depth. I mean, he's not beyond being completely confused and flustered. But he's got his head screwed on. Do you have a quote from this episode that you'd like to share with us?
And then I think, what if everyone were dead? What if all my friends and family were lying there dead? Now what would it be like to go home then?
It's a stark way of putting it. The way I interpret that is he's trying to say that his old way of life is kind of dead. He now knows things that have permanently changed his perception of life and what it means to be a human.
His old way of life, even if those people aren't actually dead, they're effectively dead. He doesn't know whether he'll ever return, and the safe bet is that he won't. And so it's easier to process if he just thinks of them as dead, as bleak as that is.
The people he knew, or the memories he has of the people he knew, are basically dead now. If he did come back, there'd be all the questions: where were you, what happened to you, etc. People would not look at him the same way. His life would be very different, even if he didn't reveal all the crazy stuff he's seen.
He'd be a cool celebrity. But yeah, his life would be ruined.
In the same way that it would be if all his friends and family died. Well, yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
His old way of life is gone, no matter what, because returning means he was gone. And that changes so much. Even if everything on the other side, on Earth, stayed the same, it didn't because of his absence.
Sad times for John and for Aaron and most of them. This episode was kind of depressing.
But I
liked
liked
it though. Yeah, it's good. I think this show does better when it's sort of darker. I guess we should move on to the next episode then.
I guess we should.
Would you like to know what it's called?
Yes, always.
It is called That Old Black Magic.
That sounds vaguely racist.
It's not.
Oh, okay.
Let's go on to this new, potentially racist episode.
But you said it's not.
Yeah, but you said it is.
Don't give me false potentials.
Just hold them at arm's length and make sure they never touch. I think we're done here.
Yes.